Good morning everyone, and thank you for coming along. Today we launch our campaign to say no to the transfer of Glenlee, Glendale and Rockyview to Rockhampton Regional Council. It's with a degree of sadness and disappointment that we find ourselves here and in this position. We would prefer not to be having to defend what is rightfully Livingstone territory, but we are doing so and have been forced into this position by what we believe is the avarice of Rockhampton Regional Council. Certainly in having to defend our territory, we do so simply for the reason that apart from de-amalgamation, these suburbs have always, and I stress always, been part of Livingstone Shire Council. Rockhampton Regional Council uses the argument of community interest to basically say these suburbs need to come to Rockhampton. They say that people from those suburbs live in, work in Rockhampton, shop in Rockhampton, send their kids to school in Rockhampton, etc. Well, the opposite applies also. We have a number of people who live in Rockhampton, who work in Yeppoon and commute down every day. And on the weekends we have residents from Rockhampton Regional Council areas coming down to the coast using our beaches, our parks, our boat ramps, our lagoon, etc. So it is a nonsense argument, a completely nonsense argument to propose that because of communities of interest, suburbs should transfer. You don't see, for example, Brisbane City Council saying to Logan City Council or Ipswich or Moreton Bay, because your residents come into the Brisbane City area to work, we want part of your land. We want compensation. You don't see that because it is simply a nonsense. Alternatively, Rockhampton Regional Council is now saying the transfer of those suburbs is the fairest thing for all. Well, that's rubbish. Absolute rubbish. The reason I say that is because the Queensland Treasury Corporation, engaged by the Minister for Local Government to undertake a financial review of the impact on the two councils, has clearly showed, the Queensland Treasury Corporation has clearly showed there is a significant financial disadvantage to Livingstone Shire Council if these three suburbs are transferred. Livingstone's sustainability will be severely impacted. The ratios that the state government departments use to assess councils right across the state of Queensland clearly shows that Livingstone's position will deteriorate to the point where we become financially stressed. At the moment we are categorised as a weak council financially. Why would you want to make a weak council even weaker? It makes no sense whatsoever. Also, the ratepayers of Livingstone Shire councils are going to be the victims in all of this. Rockhampton says it's fairer. Well, how can it be fairer when, as a result of a transfer of three suburbs, from 2024, when the change would take effect, every single ratepayer in Livingstone Shire Council would be $161 worse off because we would have to increase rates by that much to compensate for that loss. 10 years hence, that extra money, those extra rate imposts would be $250 per year per rateable assessment for everybody in the Shire. So how is that fair? It just simply isn't. Now the other aspect of this, I guess, is that I would challenge we have been challenged, I beg your pardon, by the residents of Glenlee, Glendale who want to transfer to Rockhampton. They have continually said to us, you represent us, council, so why won't you support us in what we want to do? Well, the simple answer is there are 1,700 residents of Glenlee, Glendale and Rockyview. If a large percentage of those want to go, that's their choice. But our role as a council is to support the majority of ratepayers and residents in Livingstone Shire Council, the other 36,000 people. So ultimately, what we as a council are doing is trying to protect the interests of the majority of council residents who do not want to see that transfer occur. They have told us by survey last year, and in a significant majority, that they don't want those suburbs transferred. So I'm sorry for those people in Glenlee, Glendale and Rockyview who may want to transfer to Rockhampton, but our interest as a council is to support the majority of residents and ratepayers in Livingstone, and the majority are saying no, we don't want this to happen. One of the other arguments that has been proffered by those residents is to say, well, our rates will be cheaper if we go to Rockhampton. Well, the Queensland Treasury report certainly supports that argument, but I have two questions for the residents of Glenlee, Glendale and Rockyview who want to transfer. First of all, are your rates going to be cheaper going forward with Rockhampton Regional Council? And secondly, people in those suburbs live there predominantly because they want that rural residential lifestyle, and they don't necessarily want a coastal lifestyle. Livingstone's planning scheme allows for that type of living, allows for that larger lot development. Rockhampton Regional Council complained and appealed against Livingstone's planning scheme when we launched it for consultation and approval in 2016. They appealed and didn't like it because we do have that rural residential subdevelopment capability. Rockhampton wants smaller lot urban development, and so I say to those people in Glenlee, Glendale and Rockyview who want the change, be careful what you wish for, because your nice rural residential block in the future may well be surrounded by urban sprawl. And so just keep that in mind when you're voting later this year, when you receive your documentation from the Electoral Commission of Queensland. Now, you will receive notification from the Boundary Change Commissioner in the mail. In that envelope will be a voting form for you to say yes or no that you want that the suburbs to change. You have the option of either completing that form and returning it by return mail, or alternatively you can complete the survey online. The choice is yours. Happy to entertain questions.
What do you make of Rocky coming out today saying that either between 60 and 70% of residents from a Livingstone survey said that they want those suburbs to change?
Well, the argument is the one I just proffered a minute ago. The majority of people from those areas may want to transfer to Rockhampton, but our ultimate responsibility is to the majority of ratepayers and residents in Livingstone. So, as I said, there are approximately 1,700 people in Glenlee, Glendale and Rockyview, but we have about 37,000 residents in the remainder of the Shire who are clearly saying no, they don't want this to happen because of the financial impost that it will provide.
What's going to be the end game here? Because it doesn't look like either side's going to give up.
No, it's obviously, as I said, we're very disappointed that it has got to this point. All that is really done to date is create a huge divide and a wedge between Rockhampton Regional Council and Livingstone Shire Council. For the last 2 years, under the current council regimes, we've been working very closely and very collaboratively with Rockhampton Regional Council. We've undertaken a number of projects with them, and might I say successfully. But this is going to be the elephant in the room all the time until this is clearly resolved. So from our perspective, this has provided a significant negative impact on our relationship with Rockhampton Regional Council, and I dare say between the residents of Livingstone and the residents of Rockhampton. So the determination will ultimately be made by the Minister for Local Government, who is also the Deputy Premier, Stephen Miles. So he will receive the results from the survey, he will receive the Queensland Treasury Corporation report, and he will receive the report from the Change Commissioner with their recommendations, and then ultimately make a decision.
Yeah, so it's not bound specifically to the results of the survey?
No, it's not bound to the results of the survey. The Minister is just trying to gauge the opinion of both communities, I guess.
So you talk about the majority of people. What about those minorities? Because they are still part of Livingstone Shire Council. What will you be doing, say if this was to go ahead, as those three suburbs are going to stay in Livingstone? What are you going to do for them to make them happy in the long run as well?
So just, sorry, if I can clarify, it's just saying if the change doesn't happen and those people stay...
Yeah, and the northern suburbs stay in Livingstone, because obviously they're still going to be part of Livingstone. So what are you going to do to make sure that, you know, they're happy in the future and with their council?
Well, council's policy has always been to treat all parts of the Shire equally. certainly from our perspective now, we've been channeling more money into the northern areas of the Shire and the rural areas of the Shire in terms of new roads, sealed roads, road maintenance, etc. We will continue to do that, and that's a demonstration of good faith on Livingstone's part, because we understand that there are issues in the rural areas and the northern suburb areas that aren't necessarily the same issues on the coastal areas, for example. So we will continue to support those, we'll continue to provide the services, and obviously try and keep rates as low as we possibly can.
So for this campaigning, so with the budget for this, where has it come out of?
The budget's come out of Council's essentially consolidated revenue. So Mayor Williams announced last week that Rocky is spending somewhere between $90,000 and $100,000 on this campaign. Livingston isn't that flush with cash, so we're spending 10, and that's the extent of our PR campaign around this. But it's all about quality and bang for buck. So you can spend $1 million on a campaign and still essentially get beaten by a $10,000 campaign if it's done properly. And we think that the way we're planning on rolling out our campaign and the way we're going to engage with the community and the media is going to be effective for that money, so to maximise our bang for buck.
Yep. And in the event that those 3 northern suburbs do come across to the Rockhampton Regional Council in the future, would you look at bringing them back over, or will you just reassess and cut it as a loss? That
would be a decision for the council table, and I'm not going to preempt that. Our preferred position at this point is for those suburbs to remain with Livingstone Shire Council. That's our position. If that somehow changes, then as a group of council